got Phillip Broughton. He's come down to answer some questions. He was a parliamentary candidate and also a UKIP leadership candidate. How's things at the minute? How are you doing?
Thank you. It's very nice to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, so we're going to ask you many different questions because let's be honest, what's happening at the minute in UKIP is that so many questions are being thought of, asked, but nothing's really been answered. You know what I mean? So we're going to throw some questions at you. First question, which many people think, why do you think UKIP was so successful in 2015 in the 2015 general election, getting nearly 4 million votes?
I think we had a strategy in 2015. I think we had the right leader. I think we had momentum. We had Nigel Farage as the leader of our party. He was a very charismatic leader. Yeah. He did a very good job. But also we had the momentum, as I said. We just won the European elections. The first time, another party other than Labour or the Conservatives had won a national elections since the 1900s. So we had massive momentum going into that general election. We'd also just won the Clacton and Rochester and Stroud by-elections, so we had 2 MPs. So I think, we had a real momentum there that we did so well. And I think the reason we did so well in the 2015 general election is we had a good manifesto, we had a good leader, we had momentum. And I think really we should have built on that excellent result that we got in the 2015 general election, nearly getting 4 million votes.
Yeah. With the actual success of the results in 2015 election, how do you reckon the party should have followed up that success?
I think the party had a platform after the 2015 general election to start targeting seats that it could have won. I mean, I got the 4th best result in Hartlepool at the 2015 general election. That was one of the 4 seats that we could have won. I think we should have really had a campaign of targeting those top 4 seats, Hartlepool, Clacton, obviously Thanet South, and Thurrock. Those were the top 4 at the 2015 election. I think if we'd really targeted them, I think that would have been a good thing. But also I think we needed to really broaden the horizons of the party and really start talking about some of the other issues. We don't want to just be a party about immigration and Europe, as I've said many times before. We want to be a party that talks about the NHS, the economy, law and order, and all of the other issues. And I think we should have built on that 2015 general election success, and it's a shame that we didn't.
Yeah. With Nigel Farage being a very successful leader, following the 2015 general election, I feel we should have been building a better team. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, Nigel's a great talisman for UKIP. He really was the standout star for us. Without Nigel Farage, UKIP wouldn't have gotten to where it got to. But I think after the 2015 general election, I think what Nigel should have done is he should have built that bigger team, had 5 or 6 people who were really good on the media, who could have gotten behind him and given him the support to push the party forward. And I think that was maybe a mistake, and it's something we should have done. We should have built a big team. And of course, moving forward, I think it is important to build that bigger team.
To be honest with you, with your experience, in your ward, how active you actually are, it actually shows, doesn't it, with you was the 4th best result in the country for UKIP. But to other people out in the country, how did you actually achieve that?
Yes, I mean, look, we campaigned really, really hard. I mean, I spent the year and a half before the 2015 general election knocking on every single door in the Hartlepool constituency. And I was very active on the media, writing articles in the newspapers, doing TV interviews, radio interviews, and actually really campaigning on the issues, whether it be local development or trying to save the Hartlepool Hospital. I was really campaigning on the issues, and I think that's what you've got to do. If you want to win parliamentary seats or get as close as you can, you've got to really get out there and be the person who's making the arguments for change.
I think with yourself as well, though, I think you was actually speaking real talk as well. You weren't gibbering on about random things. You was actually speaking sense, as well. You were speaking common sense to people.
Yeah.
And I think you just kept it real. You kept it real.
Absolutely. I think, people want to hear what are you going to do, why are you going to do it, and how are you going to do it. And I think, that's the thing. UKIP is a common sense party. And we are at our best when we're talking to people in language that is understandable. And we can actually say to people, look, this is what we believe in, this is why, this is how we can actually change a political system that is broken.
Yeah. We're going to change the subject now a little bit. We're going to go to the 2016 EU referendum and leadership contest. Yeah. First question I've got here. Why do you think people voted for Brexit?
I think the British people have seen the European Union dominate this country for far too long. And what they thought was, there's hundreds of other countries out there that have got a real opportunity to have their own freedom, make their own laws, control their own borders, control their own economy. And they looked at Brexit and they thought, this is actually a great opportunity for this country. We can get control of our borders, our laws and our money. And that's exactly what we've done. And I think it was fantastic to see so many people, you know, and I was out in Hartlepool knocking on doors and in the town centres and, you know, knocking, asking people, saying, look, come out and support us in this Brexit vote. And it was really great to see people do that. But it is ultimately about the freedom, the independence and the sovereignty of this country. And I think Brexit is a fantastic opportunity for this country. Once we're outside the European Union, we can actually create our own trade deals, we can make our own laws, we can control our own borders, we can actually have control of our own money and where we spend that money. These are the things. It is ultimately about control, and I think it's fantastic that the British people did vote for Brexit.
I know on the night of Brexit, I actually stayed up, you know, when the vote was coming.
Yes.
I stayed up all night.
Yes?
And I had a little bit of a celebration myself when I actually won. But on the morning of the on the referendum result, what was your feeling? What did you react like and stuff?
Well, I spent most of the night watching the results as well, and when I saw Hartlepool come in at 70% leave, I thought, wow, we must have done a really good campaign because you know, we had a lot of people backing us saying, you know, yeah, we're going to vote for Brexit. I felt amazing the morning of the referendum. You know, this is something I've campaigned for all my life, all my political life. I've wanted us to come out of the European Union and be a sovereign, independent nation. And I must admit, I had tears of joy on the morning that we voted to leave because it really is about freedom, ultimately. You know, people say, oh, the argument was about immigration. I think immigration was part of the issue. But the more important issue, when I talk to lots of people, and myself included, it's about sovereignty. It's about freedom. It's about being an independent nation state. So, yeah, I was absolutely delighted when we voted for Brexit.
Yeah.
But the thing is now, we've got to make sure it happens.
Yeah. It's okay having Brexit in name, but we want it in full.
Yeah, we want the full thing.
Yeah. My personal opinion, and I suppose many other people as well, there were questions whether Nigel Farage actually left too soon, soon after the referendum. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, hindsight is a great thing. It's a lot easier looking back with hindsight, isn't it? I mean, I think Nigel was a fantastic leader. I think, again, we maybe should have built the team, you know, because we always knew that potentially Nigel could go. And once you lose your star asset, you know, it's very difficult to replace that person. And, yeah, I think, you know, maybe Nigel should have stayed a bit longer and made sure Brexit happened, because I think we all know we've got a Remain establishment that really doesn't like the fact that the British people voted to leave the European Union and is going to do everything it can to stop it. I think maybe if Nigel had stayed on a bit longer, you know, having knowledge now that we know there was going to be another general election, perhaps having Nigel there as the leader and getting a few of us in as MPs would have really kept the pressure on the Prime Minister, Theresa May, to make sure that the Brexit actually happens.
Yeah. With, obviously, viewing what happened to Nigel Farage over the past years leading up to the referendum, you know, seeing all the stresses of being leader and everything else, what made you throw your hat in the race to become the next UKIP leader?
Well, I did see all of the pressure that Nigel was under, and I did have a number of conversations with him, you know, when we did events, not just at the general election, but at some of the conferences, and I must admit, the pressure is relentless, you know, and he would say that, and I think he's done a tremendous job for the party, you know, and he's certainly been the best asset that we've ever had, as far as I'm concerned. But when I looked at it, I thought, look, we've got a real opportunity now to build on the success of the referendum, to build on the success of the 2015 general election. And I looked at the other candidates and I thought, look, if these other candidates are running, then I can run. And I thought I was the one who could argue for things to change. I think I was the one who was arguing that we needed a change of direction. We needed to broaden the message of the party and talk about more than Europe and immigration. We needed to change the tone, because I think sometimes the way UKIP can come across wasn't in the best way, and I thought I had the skills and the talents to be a good leader of UKIP, and I thought it was right that we had a debate about the future of the party, and I knew that I should get in there and contribute to it. I wouldn't necessarily say I was going to win that leadership contest, but I thought it was important that somebody made the case for the party to change, to modernise and move forward.
Yeah. One thing I did notice, obviously, when you stood for the leadership election, was the debate was missing. There wasn't really that much debate, and people wanted to speak, and members wanted to throw the questions at the leadership to see what the responses was. Because let's be honest, you can only see a true leader in its full glory when they're there being questioned and what answers they give.
Yeah.
Do you think it actually, do you reckon the party, it was a mistake by the party not to have this open debate? And also as well, do you not think that, obviously we missed the TV debate, the opportunity to attract more people to the TV debate for UKIP?
Yeah, I think the party missed a golden opportunity there, because, the thing about debates and the thing about leadership debates is it shows the quality of the candidates, but it also shows the quality of the party, that you're prepared to actually have a debate about the future direction of the party. And I think after the 2015 general election, after winning the EU referendum, we needed to have a big debate about the future direction of the party. And my biggest frustration was we couldn't have a debate. We couldn't have a leadership debate. We needed it. And if we'd had a TV debate, I think it would have been a lot better for the party. It would have strengthened the party. It would have strengthened the new leader, whoever it would have been. And I think, probably the reason that we didn't have the debate is because Diane James, the front runner, was not particularly good at debating. And I think she knew perfectly well that if she'd had a debate, that she'd have lost.
Being leader of UKIP.
I was absolutely, I just thought, what a complete and utter joke. What a waste of time. Yeah. We'd had hustings all across the country for about 6 weeks. I'd gone to every region of the country. Diane didn't come to any of those hustings. She didn't show any leadership at all. And, I just thought, she's resigned after 18 days. I mean, how pathetic was that? Yeah. I know she's consequently left the party, but I always worried, and I did say this during the leadership contest, that I didn't think she was up to it. Yeah. And I think the fact that she wouldn't debate said a lot about the fact that she wasn't up to the job. And that's why I worried about it, and that's why I thought, I should stand. And I think ultimately I was proved right. She wasn't up to the job. She quit. And that sort of sent UKIP on a spiral that many people probably still say to this day hasn't really recovered from.
Yeah. One thing that did upset me as a member was, and I know other members as well, was when we was actually turning up to see people at the hustings, Diane wasn't there. She excluded herself from every single hustings. Now, everybody was expecting everybody to be there because obviously it was a party at the time. It's like, what's your thoughts when Diane never really turned up to the actual, the hustings as such, with everyone's expectations being high to see you all there and being asked questions?
I think I did say at the time that it's disrespectful to members.
Yeah.
Who've travelled, who've come to see you, who want to ask you questions. And I think, as a leader, you should be prepared to take the scrutiny of questions, because you should be able to answer the questions, and you should be able to give the members the full answer, so that when the members do vote, they know who they're voting for, what they're voting for. And I think, Diane really didn't cover herself in glory at all, and I think it was a missed opportunity for the party, because I think the media were ready to give us coverage for a lot of these things, and there was potential debates in the pipeline, but unfortunately, her team stopped them, because I think, like I've said before, I think she knew if she'd had debates, she'd have lost the leadership contest.
Yeah. We move on again to Nuttall's leadership and general election of the 2017. When Theresa May actually called the election, obviously, UKIP were in a bit of a bad place politically, after what happened with Diane James and everything else, and it was all led up, and it was
and the Stephen Wolfe situation.
Yeah. It was as if like it was in limbo. There was nothing there. It was just floating around. What was your you think was in a bit of a bad place? What was your thought what was your feelings and stuff when Theresa May actually asked for that election to happen? Actually,
as soon as Theresa May called that election. And I had been warning various people in the party. Yeah. I'd been saying, look, Theresa May is 10, 12, 15 points ahead in the polls. Jeremy Corbyn at that point looked very, very weak and very, very vulnerable. And I was warning, and I was saying, look, there could be a general election here. Because let's be honest, a Prime Minister who has such a commanding lead in the polls, at least before, an election was called, you almost sort of knew she couldn't resist the temptation. I always thought she would call a general election because she didn't have her own mandate, she hadn't been elected as Prime Minister. And although we live in a parliamentary system and the Prime Minister doesn't actually have to be elected, they can be selected by the MPs of their own party, I just thought Theresa May would jump at the chance to take on Jeremy Corbyn in a general election. And ultimately she did. And UKIP was not in a good situation, to say the very least, when that general election was called. And my view was we were in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And, I had to think long and hard about actually standing in Hartlepool again, because I realised that it was going to be an uphill struggle, it was going to be hard, and I took 5-6 weeks off unpaid from work, so it was a particularly hard general election, but we were not in a good state, but that could have been prevented.
Yeah. Moving on a little bit, with obviously on the 2017 election, obviously because it was such a rushed election, do you think Paul Nuttall's choice to release, the banning of the burqa policy, do you reckon it was good timing, bad timing? What's your thoughts on it?
I think it was an absolute disastrous mistake that Paul Nuttall made to start banging on about the burqa. I said that in the Northern Echo interview I did after the election, and I just think it was wrong. It plays into our opponent's hands. It makes UKIP look like a party that's irrelevant, that's talking about minor issues, that's not really focused on the big questions of Brexit, the economy, the NHS. Those are the things we should have been talking about. And I think it was a really bad political mistake to make, and it just made us look so irrelevant to what was going on.
Do you think it was right for the senior UKIP people to actively encourage UKIP voters to tactically vote for the Tories to secure Brexit and standing down in certain seats? Because I'll be honest with you, I think we doing that was everyone was confused. Who do we vote for? People who are UKIP members are thinking, do we vote for UKIP? Do we what's your thoughts on that?
I thought again this was another really bad, serious political mistake, because what it immediately did in that general election was take away a massive support that we had.
Yeah.
In seats like mine in Hartlepool, the Conservatives were nowhere. They were a long way behind in third. What UKIP should have been doing, instead of senior UKIP people saying, look, go and vote for the Conservatives, they should have been saying, look, you can't trust Labour, you can't trust the Conservatives. Neither of them really wanted Brexit. If you want to make sure Brexit happens, you need to have some UKIP MPs. So again, standing down in certain seats and actually actively encouraging people to tactically vote Conservative was a disastrous mistake, and it cost us millions of votes.
Yeah.
And there were people, when I was knocking on doors in Hartlepool, they'd say, well, your lot are telling us to vote Conservative.
Yeah.
And what can you really say against that? It's very difficult. It was a bad mistake. I think it was one of the many bad mistakes we had in a bad campaign.
Yeah. Do you think Nuttall was right to actually call UKIP the guard dogs of Brexit?
Again, it's not a term that I would have used. I mean, the guard dog of Brexit, it's as if we're like, we're just sitting there waiting for Brexit to happen. There's nothing else we've got on our agenda. There's nothing else we're going to talk about. There's nothing else we want to do. I just think, again, it reinforces this thing that UKIP is a one or two party issue. And, in a general election in 2015, when we've come so close to winning so many seats, we need to be a broad-based political party, not a protest movement. So again, I disagree with Paul on a number of things, and that's another one that I would disagree with him on. I think it was the wrong thing to do. It was basically saying to people, look, we're only focused on Brexit. In a general election, people want to hear more about than just Europe and immigration. They want to hear about what your plans are for the NHS. What's your plan for the economy? What's your plan for law and order? They want to hear the other policies, and that's what we should have been doing.
Yeah. What do you think why do you think the general election for 2017, the election result was just so bad for UKIP? What do you reckon instigated it?
Well, look, I think the first thing to say about it is we were in a bad place before the general election. So, I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Yep.
I think everybody accepts that. Many people have said that. But I think our strategic decisions, some of which we've talked about already in this interview, did not help. They added to the issue that we had. I think we were already in a bad place, and in a lot of ways, you know, telling people to tactically vote Conservative was wrong. You know, saying to people that the big policy we're going to go on is about banning the burqa, which quite frankly a lot of people aren't interested in, and quite rightly so. It's a minor issue. And yeah, I just think the guard dogs of Brexit as well, I don't think that did us any good. You know, it's, oh, this party's only interested in Brexit. You've got to be so much more than that in a general election. So the strategic and political choices that we made, you know, made sure that we didn't get a very good result.
Yeah. Do you think the party understands that and is learning from how bad we actually did in 2017, or are we just going down the same road again?
Well, there's two things I would say. The first thing I would say is there doesn't seem to even be an acknowledgement that we did bad. Now, for me, if you are going to correct mistakes, you have to at least acknowledge there's a mistake in the first place. We've gone through a number of the mistakes, and I think we have to accept that we did make huge mistakes over the last 18 months. It hasn't been great. And if you want to make things better moving forward, you have to at least address the problem and deal with it. If you just carry on as normal, carry on as business as usual, and nothing changes, then guess what? Nothing will change.
Yeah. Do you reckon it was wise to push the only MP, Douglas Carswell, obviously the MP for Clacton-Munter? Do you reckon it was wise for him to be pushed out of the party?
I think this was really another nail in our coffin, which a lot of people didn't think about it that way at the time. But when you think about it, if we had used Douglas Carswell in the right way, if we'd had promoted him, if we'd supported him, if we'd helped him, if we'd, you know, given him some role, I think, in terms of campaigning, which is what he's good at, you know, he has had a strong, you know, UKIP seat in Clacton, I think that would have really helped. But, you know, the fact that our own MP resigned from the party before the general election, it just reinforced that thing that UKIP's a minor party. Oh, it doesn't even have an MP. It was a really bad decision because it just allowed the media to play us out as if we haven't even got an MP now, which just added to all of the other problems that we had. I mean, I was sitting tearing my hair out when all of this was going on because I was thinking, you know, I'm knocking on doors for 10, 12 hours a day in Hartlepool, trying to build on my brilliant result I got in 2015, and I knew it was going to be a real uphill task because I had people saying to me, look, Phil, I voted for you and I voted for UKIP in 2015, but the state your party's in now, I don't think there's any way I can vote for you. And these are people who were voting for us in 2015. And I think all of these things did not help at all.
In simple, raw terms, how do you think UKIP have performed over the past 18 months since Brexit?
Since the referendum, I think it's been a total and utter disaster. And I really don't see how anyone could argue against that. You know, we had the leadership contest where we couldn't debate each other because one candidate won 18 days, which was a fiasco. We had the Stephen Wolfe situation, allegedly getting into some altercation in the European Parliament. That didn't do us a lot of good. And then we had Paul Nuttall as the leader. I think everybody supported Paul. Everybody thought Paul would be a good leader. But he had a lot of problems and a lot of issues in terms of his own leadership. And then there was obviously these disastrous decisions, you know, to tell people to vote tactically for the Conservatives. The guard dogs of Brexit banging on about burqas. I mean, all of these things added together equaled the result that we got at the general election, which was that we got absolutely thrashed across the country. And, you know, we have to accept that we've made mistakes. But if you want to deal with the mistakes, you actually have to change things. And the party needs radical, real, reforming, modernising change.